As Stephen said, this evening I want to focus on the RamCompare NI project that we are doing at AFBRI, because we do have a few other projects as well. So I will just briefly mention what the project is about, what's our main objectives, why it is needed and timely. I will then present some of the lamb performance data that we've obtained last year and that we are continuing on monitoring this year. And then I'll also say a few words about some new traits that we are recording as part of the project, and in particular traits that relate to the feed conversion efficiency of the lambs. So to put it into context, even though Sam did mention that, I want to mention the fact that there has been scientific work done before, and this work has been comparing the performance of lambs that have been obtained using rams that are or are not recorded, and this work has shown that it does work, that we do obtain significant differences and better performance when the lambs are from sires that are performance recorded, because they grow better, they grow faster, and also a larger proportion of them meet our market specifications. But despite that, we still have a low uptake among sheep producers of using recorded rams. We think that only about 40% of UK sheep producers are using recorded rams. So really this is a shame, because it really limits our capacity to meet and to achieve the actual potential genetic gain that we can achieve when we scale it up to the NI sheep sector. So why is that the case? It might be that the concept of EBVs can be a bit difficult to understand. There are a range of EBVs, so it might not be always easy to see which ones should I be looking at. And also, being in Northern Ireland, the fact that we actually have access to both the sheep island and the Signet breeding evaluation system, that in itself might be a little bit confusing. So that's why RamCompare NI came about. We felt it was timely to do more research on EBVs using more current and modern breed types that are finished under commercial conditions. So RamCompare NI is a research challenge fund project, so it's funded by DIRA, as well as important financial support and contributions from Agri-Research, the LMC, HDB, Dumbia, as well as Signet and Sheep Island. So there's two main aims. One is to simply contribute to the main activities of the RamCompare program, because there was no RamCompare flock in Northern Ireland. And really we do that because the monitoring of the lamb that we are doing and that we've obtained using sires that are recorded is then fed into the larger data set for both Signet and Sheep Island, and that data is then used to improve the accuracy of their EBVs and help the development of new EBVs. As well as that, an additional objective as part and specific objective of RamCompare NI is to use a subset of those lambs, both last year and this year again, and to do some additional monitoring, especially, in terms of net feed efficiency and meat quality. We do that on a subset of lamb, and the idea there is we try and understand how viable those traits are and how they can be affected by whether the lambs come from different sires with different EBVs, and we're also testing two different finishing diets, so grass only or grass and a bit of concentrate. So the approach that we are having then is, as I said, we're monitoring the performance of the lamb using traditional existing techniques, monitoring regularly the lamb live weight gain is very key, as well as capturing all the lambing data and the behavior from birth to slaughter. And then we're also, at about 12 weeks of age, we are using ultrasound, so the scanner came from across the water, and last year, so that was just below 400 lambs that we have ultrasound data from, and this year a little bit more. Then 2 weeks later, we have also CT scanned the lamb so that we can compare, get more data, and then compare the different techniques. And we're using a new kit that we have at Hillsborough with feed boxes to measure feed intake. I'll mention a little bit more about that. So the overall goal then that we have is that we hope that our findings and discussions, like what we have this evening, will improve our understanding and awareness of EBVs and help us to better achieve our rate of genetic gain. And we are developing new knowledge and new traits, especially as I mentioned on feed efficiency, and that will help us to see whether there is a good potential on, selecting for those traits as well. So the breeding program that we followed last year and the year before look a bit like that. So in year one we had just below 300 ewes that we used artificial assimilation, and we've used 9 rams, and last year we used a bit more rams and a bit more ewes to just have more genetic viability. The rams were recorded either by half and half really, from Ship Island or Signet. They were either Texel or Suffolk, and in each of those we had selected sires that were on the lower scale for EBV for muscle or high for muscle EBV. Just the picture of some of the composite ewes that we have at HFB, and then this is just one of the rams that we've used. This one was live from Ship Island, and we used that one both through artificial insemination and also as a sweeper ram. So that first slide is actually on the lambing performance. I put it here because even though we're focusing on terminal traits mostly this evening, this is just to keep in mind that that's important as well to have good number of lambs per ewe. And here I did break it down, between the lambs that were from the Suffolk low group, low meaning low for the EBV for muscle, or Texel low, or Suffolk high and Texel high, and all ewes and ram groups perform equally well at lambing. So that was 2018, and this year I don't have the graph yet this evening, but it was a similar pattern. So that's all good. In terms of lamb growth then, here for example there are the values from last year, because we haven't finished this year yet. So birth to 8 week, 8 week to weaning, and weaning to slaughter. So in grams per day, and again I've averaged all the lambs from the low sires and the lambs from the high sire group. There's no clear pattern. They are quite similar, in this period here and in after weaning. In that critical period here, there was actually a higher growth from the high sired lambs. So on average, it's quite clear here, and that led to overall a reduction in the number of days required to reach slaughter by 12 days. So that can make a big difference. Despite the fact that really we haven't really selected those sires based on their growth potential, we focused on trying to really stretch out the muscle EBVs. But that's encouraging because it means that we haven't compromised their growth by selecting for muscle. So we were quite pleased with the data here. And just again, keep in mind that it's still a relatively small set of data that we'll have more strength and maybe a clearer pattern once we combine this year's data. So in terms of, so before slaughter, so the ultrasound data at about 12 weeks of age, so that's just 2 of the traits that we can get from that. For example, the muscle depth, again from the lambs that were from the low or the high group. And as expected, in the high EBVs for muscle, the muscle depth was quite clearly higher here, which is good. And it shows that the lamb have, properly expressed the profile of their sires. And then this is the predicted 21-week weight, which is corresponding to the actual data that we'd obtain in that slightly higher for the lambs from this higher group. So that shows the benefit of using ram with high muscle EBVs without reducing lamb growth in our case. CT scanning data, so going a little bit further and providing a little bit more data. So here again, I'm just taking 2 of those. So the first one is the muscle to fat ratio. So it's the muscle weight divided by the fat weight in the carcass. And as you can see here, we do have a clear difference with those lambs, being 25% higher for that trait. And then consequently, the fat cover is higher from the low group. And this is a fat weight, so it's a percentage of fat compared to the total bone, fat, and muscle weight. So that's again encouraging to see those data here, that both the ultrasound and the CT scanning data can capture the differences quite well. So there'll be more data then coming on, especially when we want to compare the ultrasound and the CT scanning data. How do they complement each other? We'll have other parameters to look at, the high muscle area and the intramuscular fat. And also we can, once we have a little bit more data, especially after this year, we'll be able to start maybe comparing, within the different breeds and whether, the both breeds respond in a similar way. So in terms of slaughter data, so just again, very overall summary here of the kill-out percentage between the low group and the high group. Quite similar in terms of kill-out percentage. Fat score, as expected, a little bit higher from that group. In terms of confirmation, we didn't see a very big difference yet. Overall, 30% of the lambs achieved E and U grades, with little difference among the groups. But again, the data set is still a little bit small. We're only in year 2 of that project. And we have also more analyzers that we can look at that maybe will be better at tease out the differences, especially the sellable meat yields that were done on a subset of the lambs, and also meat quality, as Sam mentioned earlier, especially in terms of tenderness. This is just a picture of some of the lambs just before slaughter last year. So as you can see, the Texel cross lamb and the Suffolk cross lambs. So that's for some of the data so far. I do want to say a few words about the feed conversion efficiency, which is another aspect to the project, and what do we mean by that and why it's important. So feed conversion efficiency, you might have heard that before. It's a term used to determine how efficient an animal is in converting their diet into a useful resource. So for us, it would be a kilo of meat. That's an important trait to look at because feed and forage represent a high proportion of our costs. And having more efficient animals will make an economical sense, because if they're more efficient, then it means that you can reduce your feed and forage costs without impacting on animal performance. So in particular, we want to try and finish the larger number of animals at grass. So it might mean that you have more grass available. So you can then, if you manage it, then increase your stocking rates. And overall, then you're better off in that you increase your output, your kilo of lamb per input kilo of feed or grass. And so that makes economical sense. Now, the next important question is that can we actually select for feed efficient animals? So you can only do that if there's, if the trait is as good, it can be passed on from a generation to the next. So you want the heritability to be good. We actually don't have a lot of research done on sheep system, but a little bit more as often in like cattle, so dairy and beef system as well. And it shows that trait can be good to moderately heritable. So there's a good potential and expectation that yes, it will be possible, it should be possible to select for efficient animals. And it will be all the better because that trait is very difficult and expensive to measure. So if we can select it based on the figures of the rams, then that's all the better. It is difficult and expensive to measure because we need to know the individual intake of the animals. And that comes to, how to measure it. So simply put, feed conversion efficiency is a kilo of feed consumed per kilo of live weight gain. But often when you start looking into the scientific work that's being done, we often prefer to express it as residual feed intake, or RFI, which is the actual feed intake divided by the predicted feed intake. And this is a beta ratio because it means that you can compare animals independently of their current live weight. Because when you have different animals, you want to know which one is efficient regardless of its current live weight. So lambs with a low RFI will need to consume less feed to achieve similar average daily gain. So it's a very good ratio to look at. So as I say, difficult and expensive to capture because you need to measure individual feed intakes, but we are getting better at that. In particular, we have recently acquired and installed at HFB Hillsborough a new feed efficiency system. So we have those forage boxes where we can put silage of grass, which is really good because so far most of those studies on feed efficiencies have been done, using automatic feeders, using pelleted feed, which is not really what we usually give our sheep anyway. So that's very good to have that here, and it works. The animal goes in, the EID tag is detected, the gate comes down, it feeds, and you can then automatically record every time it comes and how much feed it is. And we have concentrate and drinker in the pens that measure the live weight of the animal each time they come in, so you can work out daily live weight gain without even touching the animals. So that's a very good setup we have here, and it enables us to really start to capture those traits. So will it make a difference? As I mentioned, yes, very likely, because really if you think about it, your animals might look exactly the same, but if you take a batch of 50 lambs, if those are more efficient, then based on some previous work that have been done, mostly on cattle system, as I said, you're likely to require 20% less feed for them to reach similar live weight, so you'll have to spend less kilo of meal to finish them. Or if you manage to finish them as grass, then you'll be able to finish them earlier, and then you'll be able then to increase your raw stocking rate. So overall, you'll be better by several pounds per lamb, and then when you scale it up to the actual ram, if it's a more efficient lamb, then you can really do the sums and see that it is worth investing in that more efficient animal. So just the take-home messages for this evening. We know that there's still a low uptake of using recorded RAM despite evidence of financial benefits. RamCompare NI aims to address that by getting us to talk more about EBVs, understand how they work better, and making us more aware of them. Our preliminary data found that there was a higher muscle depth and a muscle fat ratio for the high EBV muscle sire lambs without losing out in terms of lamb growth. As we also started to mention this evening, we can't forget about the ewe. The focus is mostly on terminal, but lamb performance is also correlated to the genetic potential of the dam. And really here, what we want to say is that, keep using management tool to select your best ewe lambs if you're using working as a closed flock, and also use EBVs for your maternal rams when they're available. It's encouraging to see that it is becoming now easier to record individual feeding takes, so we'll start understanding better how variable feed efficiency is in sheep, and selecting more efficient animals will decrease your forage cost without reducing animal performance. So there's still a way to go before obtaining new EBVs, but in the meantime, performance recording and benchmarking are crucial for us to be able to pick out the differences and for you to target, what traits you need to improve. So thank you for all the partners.
Okay, thank you very much, Aurelie. Thank you.